people here with news about alien life on other planets. Open and ready for your questions. What questions do folks have? I don't see any in the doc yet, just yet. Don't be shy. Feel free to verbalize. You don't have to necessarily start with writing.
I have one I haven't written down. I am super excited, as are you, about variable descriptions in pipeline run.
Oh man, me too.
My opinion is that the run pipeline form is one of the sort of embarrassments of GitLab, and that anything we could do to make it more of a custom experience is going to win over Jenkins people, because that's a component of Jenkins, is that ability to create that form. So I wonder if you could just give us some indication of kind of the direction we're going in with the run pipeline form, and what we can expect over the next few releases.
Tao, I don't know if that is specifically in your area and you want to, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so Francis, I was just recording the kickoff video this morning with our product designer. We're going to do for the run pipeline form, where we have an issue in 13.5 to pre-fill the form with the variable key values, the default values anyways, as those pairings are defined in the YAML file. But to also not, so you'll start seeing that. It'll make it much more usable, that form, so that when you're manually running a pipeline, you don't have to have them all memorize what to enter there. So that'll help. It'll still remain editable, but at least it'll pre-fill it for you. And then we're introducing maybe a new keyword that is description, so that you can define with some description what that variable is about. So that helps someone who's running the form and is not familiar with all of the variables. So, yes. Does that answer your question?
That's tremendous. Yeah, very exciting. Thanks, Tao.
And Francis, I'll extend on that. My excitement about it doesn't just end with the run pipeline page. I'll share my screen just briefly, and I can put this in the chat too. There's this issue that we've encountered, and Francis, I know you've brought this up from a number of customers, called CI recipes. And actually, I think Brendan's on, and he was one of the original ideators of this idea. Customers typically come to us with this problem of, hey, my central team has a bunch of pipeline templates that we want to enable our individual projects to insert into their project's CI YAML and use those kind of common definitions. If you think about, if you have these annotations about the variables and what type of variable you might need, you could also use that for the kind of recipe insertion that says, oh, here's a job. It's a standard job that we're as central ID kind of managing and updating. But here's the core variables that any team that's using that needs to make sure they interject. And they can do that in a much more consumable format than just looking at the raw YAML and having to figure it out. If once we have those kind of ability to express annotated comments from the YAML into anywhere in GitLab, we can reuse that same kind of notion in a lot of other places. So my excitement about it is not just that I know that that form is a pain today, but also that I see this opening up a lot of other opportunities for how we make the CI YAML file less just like, oh, I'm editing a YAML, and more we can interact with it, and others can interact with YAML that have been created by typically more central teams.
I absolutely love all of that. Thank you, guys. That's terrific, really exciting.
Cool. Sid, you have the next couple.
Thanks. First of all, thanks for the video. Really happy with that. I think it's super important that we signal why we're stopping with monitor APM. And I've heard you say in the video, focus appropriately. Okay, not super active. We always want to act appropriately, so it's not actionable. Verify is important. Oh yeah, sure. That's our bread and butter. I've heard people say in a call yesterday, oh, we're not doing any more new features at GitLab anymore. It's not the case either.
Yeah.
Can you tell people why we're stopping with monitor APM? Why did we stop that?
Yeah, I wrote this in the communication change issue, but I'll reiterate it here. I think it's important that when we take bets about new product scope, that we also measure if we're successful in those bets. And our performance indicators in APM were not showing success, right? If you looked at the usage of our APM product, we were struggling to dogfood it ourselves. The market maybe just wasn't ready. There's a whole lot of things we could look back and say we did differently, but it's important to kind of, what is the fallacy of sunken costs? Like, because we've started, it doesn't mean we have to continue it. And so I do think it's important to emphasize that, yes, there were other places we could invest that we believed were going to pay more return. And that's why they were a higher priority, like Verify or fulfillment or telemetry. But the important part is that we started with the bet isn't paying off today. So if that bet's not paying off, where could we put that same time and investment in a future one? That is my general, I guess, statement, Sid, of how we should think about that evaluation. But go ahead.
I don't disagree. I think that you overestimate or you underestimate the power of simplicity. It is so important that we send a clear message to the rest of the company. And we're seeing so many things. We're seeing bets paying off. We're seeing focus. We're seeing Verify. We see usage. We see XMAL. People are lost. People are like, I don't know. No new features. What are you telling me? So I think it's very important that we send a signal. Estimate or future GMAO is what this is about. We didn't see the line go up and to the right. We didn't think we'd hit future GMAO, and that's why we stopped this. And I think until we start sending that signal from the CEO level, from your level, from the product leadership, from the rest of the product leadership level, I think we're going to have a ton of confusion in this company while we're making decisions. So I think it's very important for us to start using the same words so that people aren't confused about, are new features allowed at GitLab? Is it risky to take bets at GitLab? None of that is relevant. It's just that the numbers weren't going up and to the right. No one was using the monitor, or very few people were using the monitor APM features, and it wasn't increasing. That's why we had future GMAO was low, and that's why we stopped it. Because there gotta be a perspective that we got a lot of users in the future. And GMAO is how many monthly active users does the group have? Then we got the reported numbers. We adjust them for like the people who aren't sending usage ping. And then we extrapolate them to the future. That's future GMAO. And that wasn't up, and we had very few users and it wasn't growing. So the future GMAO was very low. I think we got to be super consistent in that. And until we do that as product leadership and management and at the CEO level, I don't think that we're going to get the change that we need. We need to go from feature-itis to usage. We need to go from feature-itis to future GMAO. That's just, future GMAO is what we need to focus on as a company, because we got way too many parts of GitLab that have very few people using it and no traction. And that's what we need our product managers to focus on.
Thank you for that. I agree. I do think I have a tendency to, I talked about not falling into the sunken cost fallacy, but I do think I have a tendency to want to explain how we historically got to where we got. But the point is that today, and from this point forward, we will be evaluating on those criteria, and that is a very simple and consistent message.
Yeah, so no criteria, which I think is multiple things. A criterion, future GMAO. That's the only criterion we use.
Yeah, criteria is
in
my mind singular
and multiple. So
yes.
my is it Latin? Is not strong. I kind of bummed. I kind of felt that in school. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Sid. I appreciate it.
Based on this comment, I would have another question, which is, what do we think about being the cause of the low GMAO in the case of the APM group?
Dove and APM team members, I don't think are on the call. I can give my perspective, but I appreciate others. I think that the notion of moving to a new APM tool is a pretty heavy lift. and that certainly our capabilities were growing in that area, but you would talk to users, and I don't think the idea of them moving from a Datadog or a New Relic to GitLab APM was a heavier lift than we might have supposed. I also think, one of the things that I would encourage all PMs to think about is just the awareness factor, right? We sometimes put more effort into building capabilities when, if you really want to drive usage, there needs to be more focus on awareness of those features. We have a very broad product. It's hard to get that message through, and putting concentrated effort on figuring out discoverability methods for your features and thinking about ways to communicate in marketing about those features can pay more dividends than adding a new capability in and of itself.
And it wasn't on by default. So totally subscribes to everything you said, Kenny. Totally true. But it wasn't on by default. Use Auto DevOps. Did you have logging? If you use an Auto DevOps thing? No, logging didn't work. Elasticsearch, did it get installed by default if you use the Helm packages or the Omnibus packages, or maybe something even simpler than Elasticsearch? Nope, didn't work. Like, you had to kind of do it yourself. So what's easier? Just install Datadog like the rest of the world. So the power we have at GitLab is to turn stuff on by default. And if we don't do that, I think it's unlikely that something will get used. Now, is that something we overlooked? Of course not. We thought about it, but installing Elasticsearch by default is a big ask, both in Omnibus and the Helm packages. But it was what was, I think, holding the Partech back.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Cool. Mac, I think you have the next question.
Thanks, Kenny. So I want to highlight slide 22 and 26. Thank you for highlighting the community contributions in Verify and the release. So I wanted to raise awareness that we also have a AMR coach's role and an open invitation for the engineers in this section to apply. I had a question due to the content of the slides. Do we see the majority of community contributions mostly in the Verify area? And what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think I can answer where we see the community contributions coming from. Sam, I don't know, or Darby, if you have any perspective on volume in relative to stages.
I know that we tend to see more, I think, in the higher usage features. So I would expect that it's higher in Verify, but yeah, honestly, I don't have the data right in front of me to say that for sure. Darby, do you know offhand?
I do a little bit of tracking of the contributions in Verify, and we see a pretty significant number in the runner area, because I think that's an area that teams want to sort of they want to make runner work for their environment and their architecture, and so there's a lot of contributions that happen there. It's also a bit of a smaller code base than the whole GitLab application, the Rails app. So I think it's a little more accessible for folks too. And then the runner team also does a lot to foster that those contributions. They do an office hours where they bring in people from the community to kind of like talk through their changes and stuff. And that, I think that brings a lot more of that in as well. So I know from the Verify side, runner gets probably 75% of the contributions.
Oh, wow.
Verify.
Yeah. Okay. So if I'm hearing that, then it sounds like some of them are already coaches, but we're not recognizing them for the role. So again, open invitation and awareness. I can reach out async, but happy to see that we are having traffic here from the community in the high usage areas.
Just a quick glance at comparing release and Verify. Release only had 8 community contributions in 13.3, whereas Verify had 28 merged. So that's kind of an interesting comparison for one milestone.
And I do know that a number of groups have community contribution kind of office hours as a regular part of their process. And I have to imagine that openness encourages more contributors. I would be interested in the hypothesis that more mature and more used products have more, parts of our product have more community contributions, especially where I think some of the more greenfield work we might be doing might be more exciting to team members. So that, I think that's kind of the question of, I'm contributing because I want to add something fun versus I'm contributing because my company needs XYZ feature and we're heavy users of it. I'd be interested in the split kind of between those two contribution use cases.
Yeah, we're working on some PIs to help differentiate that. And I have the link on hand, but we can follow up async and give you insights on how we're going to track that in Q3, in Q4 and beyond. But for the first iteration boring solution, I'll extend an invitation out. Maybe I'll work with Sam on maybe we can elevate some people to MR coaches, because it seems like the team is already operating in that manner.
Sounds great. And one idea I'll throw out, one thing I haven't done but would love to see, is we have a lot of dashboards that show MR kind of volume broken down by team. It'd be really useful to be able to see on the same graph, like team member contributions and then community contributions. So that I think would, make it very quick to answer this type of question of like, where are we seeing the highest volumes? So just a dashboarding idea I have not gotten to.
Cool. I see Kyle on the call. So why don't I set up a quick coffee chat between Kyle and me and Sam, and just we get this offline and kick it off. Cool. Thank you.
Sam, we've done that in the past. If you want them at the group level, we can get Lily to basically provide that. We have it based on community. You can actually look at the percentage of community based off of the type breakdown. So if you want community specifically, but we don't do a breakdown by group, but we can add that. That's no problem.
Great. I can open an issue. I've been meaning to, and this is a good reminder, I guess. So I'll take that as an action. And yeah, coffee chat would be great. But
thanks, team. Back to you, Kenny.
Yeah. Question 5. Jackie, I thought I saw you typing that, but it doesn't.
Yeah, I didn't prefix it with my name. I'm sorry. I was trying to answer the question by myself by creeping on our dashboards, but I was wondering if we've done any research on comparing usage performance of features that aren't on by default and features that require a user action. I think the question I really want to answer is, does this artificially inflate Gmail? Kind of going back to Sid's justification around divestment and APM. So if we do have things on by default.
I'm going through my brain of the Gmails. I don't think any of them are the kind of thing that, if it was on by default, that would mean we would count like every user in an instance as a Gmail.
We did that, Kenny. Don't forget about that. We did that with container registry. Like at a certain point, package had higher usage in SMAO than anything else, including create and verify, because they counted every user that had the possibility to use the container registry as a SMAO. So that was a bit disappointing to see that people use that definition. So we removed that from the SMAO statistics, and now everything should require a user to actually use the functionality. But yeah, I think it's a great suggestion to actually look at like how that influences it. And I bet the difference is like an order of magnitude. You're going to get an order of magnitude more usage between it works versus you have to install a GitLab managed application before you can use it.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking it would be more in line with your original suggestion that because there's a setup before a user could use it, oftentimes that's a whole different person, and that process would seriously deflate Gmail. I do know there are some instances where we have, like you said, Sid, made the mistake of counting actions that weren't actually actions, but I don't think that's the case in the section anymore.
Yeah, I think we resolved all of those. And it's there's a difference between a user taking an action, like open up an issue board, and like having to install a completely different app. And I think as soon as you say that, like having to install something else, it's not going to work. So if we go back to APM, probably we'd use something like GitLab Plus to make sure people can just get started without installing something additionally.
Yep.
Oh, and by the way, we haven't really given up on APM, right? We're still that. It's
the categories are still there. They're just not a priority for us.
Yep.
Just to give some color, I don't know if everyone's familiar with GitLab Plus. My understanding of GitLab Plus is it's our providing of SaaS type services to self-managed customers to enable this kind of rapid adoption of features that they might not otherwise think of, things like runners as a service for your self-managed, or Sid's example of maybe we give you the kind of like Prometheus backend as a service so that your applications can immediately have it available.
Thanks, and I put a link in 5D.
Thanks. Sam, you have the next question.
On slide 9, you mentioned there's a split in the Verify CI group, breaking out a pipeline authoring team. Could you just explain kind of what that is and the rationale and how that'll affect what those two teams work on?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I know that I'll caveat that I know that splits can be painful for team members, but I've seen us execute a number of splits and they typically end up in more focus from individual team members and higher rates of iteration. So I'm excited about that part. The rationale for this specific split is that, you know, when we think about the criticality of the Verify stage in our stages per namespace calculation, using Verify unlocks your ability to use all these other stages. And so the go-to-market teams, the sales teams have been really focused on increasing CI and Verify adoption. And the pipeline authoring team is really going to be about that. Let's figure out how to get time to first green build. How do we get projects, users and projects rapidly using CI, and having a group specifically focused on that activity as critical business driver and experience for our users is exciting. And just in the first couple of weeks, we've been had the split on the PM side for about a month. Just in those first couple of iteration planning, we're getting to see like a lot of really exciting things that it unlocks to have a team kind of dedicated in their focus to that activity. So I do think it's also in line with this notion of let's focus on GMAO or SMAO for Verify in this case, which is number of users using pipelines, and the funnel that drives them to use that pipeline goes right through how do I author my YAML file. I think Jason this morning merged a direction page split. So if you look at the product categories page and look at the two groups, they each have their own direction page with a description of pipeline authoring and a description of the CI group. You can review those. I'll find the links to them.
Awesome, perfect.
Other questions? This has been great. We have 2 minutes. Once, twice. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.